What's up, everybody? So, I was watching SportsCenter earlier today, and they had a really interesting segment that caught my attention. They started breaking down the situation with Highsmith and how his name could actually end up being tied to the Lakers in the near future. Now, let me be clear. They weren't talking about him like he's some superstar or a franchise changer, nothing like that. What they were saying is that in the current NBA landscape, especially with how teams are looking to fill out rotation, a guy like Highsmith can be really valuable. He's that classic 3-and-D type of wing who brings size, energy, and defensive versatility. And the conversation got even more intriguing when they connected it back to potential moves involving someone bigger, like an Andrew Wiggins type of trade. The point that was made was pretty simple. If the Lakers do end up making a splash for a player of that caliber, chances are you're going to need a third team involved. And that's where a guy like Highsmith could come into play. SportsCenter tossed around the idea of Brooklyn being that middleman, the team that helps facilitate the deal, while also moving Highsmith in the process. That's the kind of creative framework teams are using these days, and it really makes sense. Think about it. Let's say the Lakers give up someone like Gabe Vincent in a bigger trade. You don't just want to lose depth, you want to make sure you're replenishing it with players who can step in right away. Slotting in Marcus Smart at the 1, pairing him with a long wing like Highsmith at the 2, then adding Wiggins at the 3. Now all of a sudden, you've got a defensive core with real size and switchability. SportsCenter really highlighted that length, talking about Smart's wingspan, Highsmith's near 7-foot wingspan, and then Wiggins' ability to play both ends of the floor. It paints a picture of a roster that could be much tougher defensively while still keeping shooting and versatility intact. And here's where the Nets come in. What they emphasized was how Brooklyn has basically become the league's go-to third team. Every other week, it feels like the Nets are involved in some trade, not just rumored, but actually executed. They've been taking on contracts, flipping players, and stockpiling second-round picks like it's nothing. SportsCenter even referenced the idea that for the Nets, this is all about asset accumulation. They're not chasing stars right now. They're raising their hand and saying, hey, you need us to make your deal work? We'll take the salary. We'll give you a piece back. Just send us the draft capital. That's why Highsmith makes so much sense. He's on a cheap deal. He's on an expiring contract. And honestly, that makes him attractive to pretty much every contender in the league. SportsCenter brought up the report from the New York Post that said flat out, the expectation is Highsmith will be traded to a contender by the deadline. Brooklyn isn't keeping him long-term. They know he's a movable asset. The goal is simple. Showcase him, let him get healthy, put him out there to remind teams what he can do, and then flip him for another pick. And when you think about it from that angle, it really is a win-win for Brooklyn. They already got a second-round pick in the original deal that brought him in, and if they can flip him again at the deadline for another one, that's essentially free value, a home run for a team that's not trying to win right now, but is laser-focused on building a treasure chest of assets. And for the Lakers, or any other contender, it's the perfect situation. You get to swoop in mid-season, add a defensive-minded wing who doesn't cost much, and plug him right into your rotation without blowing up your salary cap. So yeah, listening to that segment, you can see why this is a story to keep an eye on. Highsmith isn't the headline name, but sometimes it's those under-the-radar additions that end up making the biggest difference in a playoff run. So, watching SportsCenter earlier, they went even deeper into the Highsmith situation, and this is where things started to get really interesting. The analysts weren't just looking at him as a short-term rental. They actually broke down the type of contract he could be looking at in the near future. They were saying something along the lines of 4 years, maybe 82 $32 million, possibly up to 40 if the market gets competitive, and that would still keep him in a very manageable range of 8 to 10 million per season. For a player of his profile, a legitimate 3-and-D wing with size, athleticism, and defensive versatility, that's actually a bargain in today's NBA. They emphasized how rare it is to find wings who can defend multiple positions and also space the floor. Highsmith has shown he can do that. He's not the kind of guy who's going to give you 20 points a night, but he doesn't need to be. What teams need from him is exactly what he brings: consistency, energy, and the ability to defend 1 through 3 while hitting shots at a respectable clip. In fact, SportsCenter brought up his numbers: around 7 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, shooting nearly 46% from the field. That's solid production, and when you pair that with his size, 6'5" with a 7-foot wingspan, you can see why contenders would value him. One point that stuck with me was when they said you could even argue for him to start at the small forward spot on a team like the Lakers. And honestly, they're right. The Lakers have been searching for reliable wing depth for years. Yes, LeBron is still there. Yes, they've got some other options, but that consistent two-way presence has been missing. Highsmith could easily slide into that starting 3 role, give them perimeter defense, switchability, and just enough shooting to space the floor. That's exactly the kind of profile that elevates a roster. But here's where it gets tricky. As they explained, while almost every team in the league could trade for him because his contract is so affordable, the mechanics of actually making the deal work are a little different depending on who's involved. For example, the Lakers don't have those mid-tier contracts that match perfectly with Highsmith's number. To bring him in, they'd probably have to move someone like Gabe Vincent, who makes more than $11 million. That doesn't make sense if you're only getting Highsmith back. So, as the show pointed out, if the Lakers go after him, it's more likely to be part of a larger package, maybe in a 3-team deal where they also land another rotation piece, like a backup center. That was another big takeaway: the idea that pairing moves is the smarter path forward. Don't just add a wing and a big, or a wing and another role player, so you're addressing multiple needs at once. They threw out examples of other teams doing this, grabbing a versatile wing while also shoring up the front court depth, and how that strategy has paid off in recent years. For the Lakers, someone like Highsmith, alongside a solid backup big, could completely change the rotation. Suddenly, you're not only covering LeBron's minutes more effectively, but you're also giving Anthony Davis a reliable partner in the front court rotation. And the bigger point? The Nets know exactly what they're doing. Brooklyn isn't keeping Highsmith long-term. They'll showcase him, let him get some consistent minutes, and then flip him to a contender that's desperate for wing depth before the deadline. And when you think about it, it's the perfect setup for both sides. The Nets get more assets for their rebuild, and a team like the Lakers gets a cost-controlled, reliable player who fits seamlessly into their system. SportsCenter wrapped this segment by saying, "It's hard to imagine a scenario where Highsmith is still on the Nets roster after February. The value is too obvious, the market is too wide, and the need across the league is too great." And honestly, they're right. A second-round pick, maybe a pick swap, that's probably enough to get it done. For the Lakers, who are still trying to balance the roster around LeBron's timeline, this feels like the exact kind of low-risk, high-reward move that could pay dividends in the postseason. Adding a player like Haywood Highsmith could solve multiple rotation issues for the Lakers. He gives you a reliable option at the wing spot, someone who can slide between the 2 and the 3, and even work in small ball lineups. Imagine defensive-minded units featuring Marcus Smart, Highsmith, Jared Vanderbilt, Andrew Wiggins, and Luka Doncic. That's the kind of group that can switch across positions and pressure opponents on every possession. Highsmith's profile fits exactly what Los Angeles has been missing. Entering the league in 2018-19, he took a brief detour in another pro league before establishing himself with Miami in 2021-22. This past season was his most productive, appearing in 74 games and starting 42. He averaged just under 25 minutes, attempting 5.3 shots per game, while shooting 45.8% from the field. From beyond the arc, he connected on 38.2% of his 3.1 attempts per game. For his career, he's right around 37 to 38% from deep, consistent, and dependable. That shooting matters even more in the Lakers' system. With playmakers like Doncic, LeBron James, and Austin Reeves drawing defenses in, Highsmith would be seeing the most open looks of his career. For a steady 38% shooter, it wouldn't be surprising if he climbed closer to 40%, simply because of the quality of shots he'd get. Beyond the perimeter, he was solid inside the arc as well, hitting 57% of his two-point attempts, finishing with an effective field goal percentage of 57.2%. Defensively, he adds versatility. Last season, he averaged 3.5 rebounds, 1.1 assists, a steal, half a block, and nearly 7 points per game. Per 36 minutes, that projects to 9.5 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.5 steals, and a block. That's the kind of production any contender would welcome off the bench. For the Lakers, it's exactly the type of 3-and-D role player who complements stars and strengthens the second unit. Pairing Highsmith with someone like Andrew Wiggins and adding another piece such as Day'Ron Sharpe could give this roster the depth and balance to compete for a championship. With those additions, Los Angeles would have a legitimate claim as favorites heading into the 2025-26 season.